Hi, everyone. 2 o'clock in the west, 5 p.m. in the east. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. This is my secret podcast, Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. And you might say, come on, Emil. You've been gone a few days. I haven't missed you. It was a long weekend and big news. Well, the big news, right? The primary. I thought I could talk about the primaries going up to it, but I thought, let's wait to see what happens. If you saw my column in the ALDEF blog and the other publications, aaldef.org/blog, I didn't have much hope for Haley. I mean, Haley's staying in it is only to continue to go to Donald Trump, to bait Donald Trump. That's my new column that I put out. You'll see it on the ALDEF blog. So I'll talk about that today. But basically, I've been kind of under the weather. You can hear my voice sounding like it wants to be. It's sort of like part Marlon Brando in The Godfather, part Joe Biden, which is not a flattering kind of sound for someone that looks like me. But here I am, and I just thought I would take a rest to see if things got better, and the things didn't get better, and then the news got worse. So here I am. Welcome to this is Wednesday. Oh my God, it's why I lost today. So in the meantime, I did go to LA. I was in LA for not necessarily but coincidental to the big Senate debate. California has a race to among Democrats to replace. It's actually not just Democrats; it's Democrats and one Republican to see who's going to replace Dianne Feinstein. There's a share. What do you call it? LaFonza Butler is kind of like an interim, and so that happened. I don't know if anyone is paying attention about it, but I'm going to write about that because it's interesting that this happens in California, where you have all these Democrats running to take over for Dianne Feinstein, who has passed away, and they're all unique Democrats. And only in California can you get that. That's why California is so unique. So I'm going to write about that at some point this week. It was fascinating. I don't know who won, really, but I will say this. Steve Garvey, the former LA Dodger who wants to be the Republican senator from California, does not look ready for prime time. He thinks he can get by on charm, but I think he just looked pretty ill at ease at the debate. I thought Schiff was okay. Barbara Lee, I thought she really, in a side-by-side, you see Barbara Lee, you see Adam Schiff, you see Katie Porter, and it's like pick your person, pick your style. It's a very tough race for Democrats in California, but it will show. I think it will reveal to California that there's no such thing as a stereotype Democrat. They may have, it's like progressive, most progressive, least progressive, but they're all to the left of Steve Garvey by a mile. So interesting. So I'll talk about that at some point this week. In the meantime, New Hampshire, what can you say about Nikki Haley? I think the longer she stays in the race, she provides a public service to America. In fact, I'm saying it's Nikki Haley's public service to bait Donald Trump. I mean, she lost by 11 points. She's not quitting yet, but she may be doing us a big favor because as long as she stays there baiting Trump, that allows him to show us exactly why he'd be a terrible choice for the GOP and for America, then I suppose it's okay. I mean, it's not my money. I think there's some Koch brother money in there for Nikki Haley, which, hey, I'll spend the Koch brothers money. I mean, there's all sorts of Republicans out there funding her. She bought a big ad buy in South Carolina, which is her home state. It's not necessarily true that by going to South Carolina, she's going to win because she's what's the opposite of a favorite son, a favorite daughter, former governor. It's a different kind of electorate. But what she does do is by putting herself out there and by forcing Trump to go after her, which he does, it's like, do we really need it though? See, that's the thing. I mean, isn't having 91 felony counts, 4 indictments, 2 impeachments, and being found liable for sexual assault, isn't that enough for major league presidential resume killers? I mean, if you had all those in your resume, wouldn't you just want to like roll up, shrivel up, and just go off to Mar-a-Lago, lock the key behind you, lock the door behind you? But no, because Donald Trump is proud of his record. But normal Americans should understand that this is the kind of guy Donald Trump is. And then if Nikki Haley's out there, I mean, you can see in real time the racism, the sexism, So in a way, it's good that Haley hasn't quit. Now, for a conventional win, Haley's best shot moving forward is to dress up as if she were a modern Statue of Liberty, right? Got to invoke the Statue of Liberty. The Republicans are all anti-immigrant. Isn't that odd, huh? So you have her, she's got to be essentially a Statue of Liberty, and she's telling her fellow Republicans, give me your college educated, give me your moderates. She has to go that route because they're the only ones who voted for her in New Hampshire. And it's a model. According to the exit polls, independents went 58-39 for Haley over Trump. College grads were 56-42 for Haley. And furthermore, the exit polls are saying if Trump wins, Haley supporters, 84% of her supporters will be dissatisfied. So it suggests they aren't nose clip voters, the kind who hold their nose as they vote for Trump. They might be able to win if they were joined by enough chronic non-participants who see this existential moment in American democracy. I mean, because that's what we're in. I mean, you could say, hey, I'm going to pass, I'm not going to vote. I mean, a full 2/3 of Americans usually don't vote, right? I mean, the turnout is generally 30-35% at best, maybe 40 in a big general. But if people understand this is an existential moment in American democracy, Mel, you might see some people who are on the sidelines saying, okay, I got to finally do it. I got to do it. Now, admittedly, it's an outside chance, but if you consider the sighting of Halley's Comet, which is visible to Earthlings every 79 years or so, then you see the odds. Not that great, but an outside chance. Worth a shot to remind us all once again that the worst qualities of Trump are always there, no matter if he smiles, no matter if he tries to be engaging and charming. The real character, right? And you saw it last night on primary night. At the end, Trump acted like Haley was some walking dead zombie. You saw the quote. He said, even Ron came in second and he left. She comes in third and she's still hanging around like she's just, walking dead. I mean, Trump just couldn't understand why she wouldn't just quit. He said, I find in life you can't let people get away with bull. And he said the whole BS word. Some people bleeped it out. He said it. Trump said, he described Haley's acknowledgement that he won. And then he watched her say, the race is far from over. And that really got to Trump. He seemed angry at that post-campaign speech and in disbelief. He said, and when I watched her in that fancy dress, okay, now he's going after her. This is like the ad hominem, right, of Trump. I watched her in that fancy dress, probably wasn't so fancy. Oh, yeah, not so fancy. I mean, Her husband's in the military, for goodness sakes. I said, what was she doing? We won. That's what Trump said. What was she doing? We won. Who the hell was the imposter? He said the word imposter because that's a trigger word for women, minorities. Because they're all imposters. They don't think they're good enough. They don't think they deserve to be there. And here she is saying, "I'm here. I deserve to be here. I'm going to fight on." He calls her an imposter. He said, "Who the hell was the imposter that went up on stage and like claimed a victory? She did very poorly, actually. She had to win. Then she failed badly," said Trump. Actually, both candidates had very revealing speeches to end the New Hampshire primary. Trump's speech started with a lie. He said, "If you remember, we won in 2016, and if you want to play it straight, we also won in 2020. He actually said that on primary night. He said, "We actually won in 2020, repeating the big lie as his election denier fans cheered on. As we all know, right? Because we can fact check this. Got to fact check Trump in real time. Biden beat Trump by 4.5% in the popular vote and by 74 votes in the Electoral College. Trump lost. The election deniers, right? They die hard, though. Still motivated. The lie still motivates Trump voters almost as much as racial animus. Now, just before the vote this week, the key point about racial animus, Trump made race the polarizing issue in New Hampshire by purposefully bungling Haley's South Asian name, calling her Nikki Nimrata Haley. It's Nimrata. It's not Nimrata, but Nimrod. Saying Nimrata makes it sound like Nimrod, which actually is, it's like a hunter. It's a mythical, biblical reference, Nimrod. But in slang, Nimrod has devolved into meaning idiot. And this is Trump at his finest. You can see my previous column on the All Def blog, where I call Nikki Haley a racism denier. I'm not a big fan of hers, but I'm just observing what's happening before our eyes. So here's Trump calling her Nimrata, right? No apology for essentially what is greenlighting a kind of racial transgression for his MAGA base to emulate and target Asian Americans, right? I mean, a leader would say, "Hey, no, don't do this. That's racist. Don't do." No, this is regular Trump fare, right? And here's how Trump expects to get away with it. At his victory celebration, he showed how he believes he's inoculated himself from any charges of racism. He surrounds himself on stage not by white MAGA politicians, but by his new dark surrogates. Behind Trump last night was the glib Vivek Ramaswamy and the smiling South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, flashing a broad, toothy smile. And Trump even let Ramaswamy give a cheerleading type rah-rah speech, where Ramaswamy said, "What we saw tonight is America first defeating America last." That's what you sound like when you go from candidate for Republican nomination to attack dog for Donald Trump. I mean, both of them, Ramaswamy and Scott, are, they're going for the Veep ship. You know that. But I think it was more embarrassing what Trump did to Scott. And he brought Scott up, standing behind him. Scott was mentioned how Scott was appointed by Haley to be senator, but endorsed Trump. And then Trump said to Scott, "You must really hate her." And Scott, the African-American senator who ran and failed in a presidential run, which was based on trying to be positive, tried to stay positive even in that situation. He looked kind of tense as people looked on, and he said to Trump, "I just love you." Oh my God. This is like, this is worse than kissing the ring. This is, "I just love you." And of course the crowd cheered, but maybe it was Scott doing his Marianne Williamson impression. I mean, she didn't do as well. When I was looking at the Democratic primary was kind of like an unofficial one where you had to write in Biden and he won handily. Dean Phillips, though, the surprise was Dean Phillips did better than Marianne Williamson, who had, I think Marianne Williamson had 4% of the vote, which was sad because I think Marianne Williamson, if you're looking for alternatives, she's worth looking at. And she leads with love. And that's why I said, when Scott turns to Trump and says, "I love you," I think he's channeling Marianne Williamson. I mean, but Scott's a Bible thumper, one of those evangelicals who will embrace the sinner, I guess. That's why the evangelicals are all for Trump. Marianne Williamson is spiritual, moral, and ethical. She knows where Trump belongs, not in the White House. Like I said, if you're curious about Marianne Williamson, she's worth looking at. But in the end, I think people are going to understand that if you want to make sure that Trump is defeated, you consider the third party candidates, or actually she's not a third party candidate. She is the Democrat running along with Dean Phillips against Trump. But who do people take more seriously? Dean Phillips. Why? I don't know why. Marianne Williamson deserves a look. Anyway, so we have at least a few more weeks of this until the rich industrialists like the Koch brothers funding Nikki Haley's campaign realize they're just burning money. I mean, it leaves us with the misogynist dream battle. Trump versus Haley, mano a mano. Trump, the man who grabs women by the P word. Trump, the man who couldn't control himself recently in the New York courtroom in that case involving his defamation of writer E. Jean Carroll. Just think about how traumatizing it's been for Carroll, 80-year-old woman, to testify in Trump's presence, how he has wrecked her good name in her life. Trump's already been found liable for sexually assaulting Carroll, which is tantamount to rape. And now what's at issue is the punitive damages that could reach in excess of $10 million. And this is the man Republicans want to be their president. Half the U.S. population is female, recall. And a master misogynist is the best the GOP can do. I subtitled this podcast, "What Does an Asian American Think?" WDAAAT, what does an Asian American think? I've asked Asian American Republicans since 2016, and you know who they are. They're primarily Filipinos and Vietnamese. And I asked them, ever since 2016, when Trump does something, and I asked them, are you still for Trump? After he exposes himself as a failed moral leader, I always ask them. And they always say the same thing. Well, he's better than Hillary. They all say that. I mean, from 2016 to even to this day, when Hillary isn't even relevant. But Hillary Clinton, the Democrat, right? They always mention her. She's a woman, they'd say. So in 2024, there's still such a visceral hate for Hillary and women in general among the Trump base. It's hard not to see all that misogyny transfer to Haley. Now, what can be said about Haley in these last couple of weeks? If Trump deals in racism and sexism, it's safe to say that Haley's taken up ageism. I mean, this is an issue very near and dear to my heart. I mean, I'm anti-ageism all the way. But there's Haley saying the first party to retire its 80-year-old candidate is going to be the party that wins this election. I mean, really. I mean, she could talk more about what they do, their policies, but she's going after the ageism thing. The first party to retire its 80-year-old candidate is going to be the party that wins this election. No kudos for me for that line. And then in another line in her primary night's speech, Haley was just as bad as Trump on all the other isms. Here's what Haley said. A Trump nomination is a Biden win and a Kamala Harris presidency. Haley said that in a single line that invokes ageism, racism, and sexism. I mean, Kamala Harris, an African-American, Asian-American, a woman. And Haley said derisively, a Trump nomination is a Biden win and a Kamala Harris presidency. And of course, the crowd went nuts. This is red meat to the MAGA base. They hate Kamala Harris, and Haley is going to dish that up. So, ageism, that's her bread and butter, but don't think she's above racism and sexism. So, I think Haley may yet make it to Super Tuesday. She might get around South Carolina and make it all the way to the Super Tuesday. But in that last quip about Harris presidency, she does raise an historical possibility for the future. If you're Asian American, I mean, two women of Asian Indian descent battling each other to be the president of the United States. It could happen. It could happen. That's one of the interesting things about Nikki Haley still being there. And then setting up a future battle royale, perhaps, between Haley and Kamala Harris. Anyway, it goes on, like I said, until the Koch brothers say, hey, I'd rather not burn our money. I mean, the Republican Party wants her to stop. The Republican Party wants her out. And the Democrats, they just as soon Haley leave, because if those polls that people cite that say, and Haley always mentioned this, that, you know, she beats Biden by 17 points. If that holds true still, it was an earlier poll taken about a month ago. But if that holds, maybe she has a shot. Because Biden, I know, would much rather have this be Biden-Trump, good versus evil, the caretaker of democracy versus the plunderer of democracy. That's what Biden and the Democrats want. So let's see, next couple of weeks. It all depends on who signs the check for all the TV ads that Nikki Haley is going to buy in South Carolina and in the other states. You know, one of the things I noticed when I was in LA for the Senate race between Katie Porter, Barbara Lee, Adam Schiff, and Steve Garvey, I saw a lot of ads for Schiff, a lot of ads for Porter. They lead the way, you know, with over $1 million, you know, raised. Barbara Lee is a poor third. She may yet be the best candidate, but the old saw about campaign financing or donations being the mother's milk of campaigns, that's what's going to keep things going for Nikki Haley next couple weeks. Okay, so that's New Hampshire. And, you know, and it's really sad that New Hampshire and Iowa, perhaps the two whitest states in the country, lead the way, and they form the ticket for the Republican Party. That's why, Nevada is a key state, and it's coming up. I don't know the exact date, but it's coming up soon. I think it's the next big one. And that's far more diverse. So we'll look at Nevada in the coming days. All right, some other news before we get out of here. I've been a career broadcaster. One of my heroes died. Yeah. Charlie Osgood. Man, Osgood was, if you were not a hard news guy, if you liked to be a little human, liked to be a little, just real, right? Instead of, hey, I'm here. No, Osgood had a kind of, I'm an announcer guy. He had that voice. But there was something about him that was also very human. And he did the human interest stories at the end of the CBS Evening News. He would be on the radio doing poetry, reading rhyming prose on the radio. He'd say, see you on the radio. So he had the best of all worlds. TV correspondent. He anchored Sunday morning. And I think if I had my druthers, yeah, he was the model for a guy like me. But a guy like me who could do hard news, but really loved just the platform of the news broadcast to be real, right? I mean, you're not trying to be, he was trying to be funny sometimes, but he just wanted to be empathetic and real. Osgood. And Osgood, you may not have seen him, but when he showed up on TV, he had his bow tie, played the piano, talented guy. I only met him once I think I met him at an RTNDA convention, but it was really brief. It wasn't like, a meeting of the minds kind of thing. I did write a review of one of his books, which was a collection of his essays. I don't think I was as charitable as I should have been. Now I kick myself because I should have been much nicer. I failed to grasp the real intention of reviewing. It's not to show off your ego or to show off your vocabulary, but it was to encourage, praise Osgood, but I didn't. So I that's one thing I kind of regret, because it was just Osgood's essays on the from the radio in book form, and I should have been more charitable. So that's my confession. But when I heard that Osgood had died, it was, it just got me, because, as I said, not many heroes in television news, but for those of us who were versatile and did both hard and soft news, for those of us who were into human interest and features, and we're always given the chance to do the hardest news. I mean, there's a pecking order in the newsrooms. You don't get the plum assignments, but sometimes you had to make do with what they gave you, which puts you sort of in that category. Oh, Emil can do that kind of story. That's an Osgood type story. We'll close the 6 o'clock newscast with that, or we'll close the 5 o'clock, or whatever. So Osgood was a kind of hero because he was that guy. And at stations I worked for, I filled that role too. I was that guy. Charles Osgood. He died of dementia. He was in his 90s. Makes you think, they say there's lots of studies about dementia now, and a lot of people say that it's related to diet. Stay away from diets that are high in fat. Stay away from meat, red meat. Stay away from high cholesterol diets, and you might ward off dementia, which some people consider. There are some people consider, like, diabetes type 1, diabetes type 2. They consider dementia diabetes type 3 or Alzheimer's and dementia. I mean, I don't mean to conflate them, but there are people looking at how diet's related. Anyway, and I heard that about Osgood, it was even sadder, because part of his charm, his appeal, was just he was his facile nature with the quip, with the words, and really just being human, right? Charles Osgood. He always would say, see you on the radio. And when he was on the morning radio on AM, CBS News, with his Osgood files, I remember it was the same time that I was at NPR and All Things Considered. And I would tell my boss at the time, Osgood would always sign off saying, see you on the radio. And I would always say to my boss at the time that, hey, I like, because he knew I worked in television as well. I said, I like radio because the pictures were better. And it's true. I look so much better on radio. Of course, now people can actually see me if they're watching this on YouTube or if they're watching this on Facebook. Anyway, Charles Osgood. What a guy. And it's not that I wish there were more. I mean, people say, oh, he was your hero, Emil? Charles Osgood? Really? I mean, one of the whitest broadcasters, well, there were no Filipino broadcasters. None that really, I could relate to. I mean, who did what I did. So, yeah, what a career he had. CBS News Sunday Morning for 22 years. Retired in 2016. He was 83 when he retired because, they can't kick you out. I mean, you can hang in there as long as you can. Actually, I guess they could force him. They didn't. But he was the longest serving host of the weekend news show, which has aired for more than 40 years. And you recall, before Charlie Osgood, it was Charles Kuralt, who was another one of those guys, right? Now it's Jane Pauley, another one of my favorites, who does Sunday morning. She's a little different type than Charlie Osgood, maybe a little easier to look at. I've always liked Jane Pauley. But, there was always something patrician about Osgood. His name was Charles Osgood Wood III. Born in New York, grew up in Baltimore, attended Fordham, worked at the campus radio station, graduated in 1954. Fordham, good Catholic school. I don't think he was the Fordham Flash. That would be Frankie Frisch. But Charles Osgood Wood III. Patrician. Known for his love of music. He was the U.S. Army Band's announcer in 1950. And he was a DJ for Dwight D. Eisenhower during the president's hospital stay. So, I guess if you're going to serve in the Army, being a DJ in the Army, not bad. I mean, he was a radio guy and then joined CBS News in 1971. And according to some biographies, let's see here. Taking this from the Wall Street Journal biography. He won an Emmy. News and Documentary Lifetime Achievement Award in 2017. He won a Peabody Award. Anyway, he was known as a funny guy and known for his bow tie. See, I mean, no matter what, you do all your news stories, and what are you known for? You're known for the trademark. But he wore a bow tie. And he influenced Filipino broadcasters like Emil. He did. Yeah, Osgood, he was the guy. He was the guy. All right, other news today. Hey, Jon Stewart's coming back. Yeah, and, this doesn't surprise me. He's coming back to The Daily Show. All the people who tried out, all the celebrities, Roy Wood Jr. said, hire a host, for goodness sakes. And Comedy Central is going back to Jon Stewart probably because ratings have never been quite as good as when Jon Stewart was there, right? I mean, he was the host for 16 years. It was a big deal when he left. Now he's going back. Not so bad, but here's the thing. He likes to do other things, so he's going to come on as executive producer, work one day a week. There's going to be a rotating lineup of comedians, which is a way to keep everyone happy. Because this was the best way they could have settled the disagreement about who should be host, right? They went through the whole thing about rotating hosts, and Comedy Central wouldn't commit. And so now this is the best way. You bring back Jon Stewart. He's on Mondays. You have the rotators, Tuesday through Thursday. Boom, everyone's happy. Nice compromise. And Chris McCarthy, chief executive of Showtime and MTV Entertainment Studios, said in a statement, Stewart is the voice of our generation. Okay, I don't know, is he the voice of our generation? Is he the Walter Cronkite? Isn't it funny that we don't have a Walter Cronkite who is the voice of our generation? We have a comedian who actually does fake news in a positive way. Donald Trump just stole that fake news moniker. And Comedy Central says, and we're honored to have Stewart return to The Daily Show to help us all make sense of the insanity and division roiling the country as we enter the election season. I guess it says something, too, about our generation. The news taken straight is killing us. In the statement, Chris McCarthy, MTV Entertainment, said, in our age of staggering hypocrisy and performative politics, Jon is the perfect person to puncture the empty rhetoric and provide much needed clarity with his brilliant wit. Yeah, I guess it's not enough to defeat the hypocrisy and performative politics, but we go down laughing, which is the sad thing about the voice of our generation being the jester and not the king, because the jester is still the jester and the king is still the king. Hypocrisy and performative politics intact. That's my only problem. I have no gripe with Jon Stewart, but I noticed this when I was in newspapers briefly, and all my smart friends, PhDs, professors, they loved watching Jon. They loved The Daily Show. I never got it. Working in news, I never got it, right? I really understood the appeal. Oh, yeah, I can laugh every now and then. But there are people who are watching The Daily Show to get their news. Like I said, I'm all for Jon Stewart, but the gesture did not defeat the hypocrisy and the performative politics. So how powerful was the gesture? Only as pain relief. That's about it. But we'll see. He's coming back. the Monday after the Super Bowl is when he starts. So, as they say, good for Jon Stewart. All right, there's a lot of entertainment news worth talking about. Everyone talking about the Barbie snub. I mean, this happened while I was gone. The 96th Academy Awards. Barbie, won the Globes. It wins everything in all these, run-up award shows. But Greta Gerwig is gone, or she's not nominated for Best Director. Margot Robbie wasn't recognized. Ryan Gosling, who was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, said there is no Ken without Barbie in his statement. There is no Barbie without Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie, the two people most responsible for the history-making, globally celebrated film. To say that I'm disappointed that they are not nominated in their respective categories would be an understatement. Well, yeah, Ryan Gosling knows that. I mean, frankly, I will say this. I have seen Barbie and have seen it a number of times. Own it. I love that movie. Oppenheimer, which is, it's sort of the counterpart or the counterweight to Barbie. I kind of know what that's going to be like, and I'm not eager to see that. I will see it ultimately. But I'm here to say I'm a Barbie guy. And I've been a Greta Gerwig guy ever since Frances Ha. So I don't like Margot Robbie, but really it's really about the director's vision, the writer's vision, less so the actors. But I like Margot Robbie. I like America Ferrera, who was nominated also, but not Margot Robbie. She's Barbie, and not Greta Gerwig. She's Barbie. So that's a tough one. And, all this, you can say it doesn't matter, but it does, because people look to see who wins, and it's a heck of a marketing push if you win or if you're nominated. But maybe this will cause a backlash, and people will just go out and see Barbie if they haven't yet, or see it again. I've seen it about 2 or 3 times, since I own it now. Haven't seen Oppenheimer yet. But I'll get to that. It's just that it takes an imagination to really come up with something where you're doing a movie about a doll, a plastic doll. That's imagination. On an Asian American score, Past Lives, another movie I love. I saw that. Maybe I love that movie because I spent some time in the East Village, and the character does some things in the East Village. She lives there with her husband, but she connects with this guy she knew years ago in Korea, and they come and visit, and it's just such a heartfelt movie about love and romance, and about reconciling the past with the present. It's about immigration. It's an Asian American story, a Korean American story. I think you can add Past Lives to the list of great Asian American stories that we're seeing on film, the movies, Netflix, you name it. And so I'm glad it's getting attention. The critics were giving it attention, when it opened up the earlier part of the year. But really, it's Past Lives. I saw it in one of the first movies I saw back in the theater. Another movie that didn't get mentioned at all, I don't think, Joyride, which is an Asian American film about a young adoptee who grows up, transracial adoptee, grows up in America, goes back to China to seek her real parents, and laughter ensues. Right? It's just an Asian American story that hasn't been told and needs to be told. I mean, the other day, someone came up to me and they know I do stuff in Asian American publications and organizations, and they said, we adopted a Chinese daughter, woman's white. And I said, yeah, this is one of the great untold stories. Have you seen Joyride? No, she hasn't. Hopefully she will. Anyway, but that's the kind of film that normally gets snubbed by the Oscars, right? I mean, you wouldn't expect Joyride, although it should, but you won't expect it to get any kind of any kind of mention. And I think that's what did it for Barbie, because it was a movie that couldn't be categorized. Drama? I mean, it has some really important moments, some important things to say to humanity and how we deal with it, how we deal with our relationships as men and women. I don't know. So I'm with the people who are upset with the Barbie snub. Should have been snubbed. I think I'll watch Barbie again tonight. In fact. All right. Let's see some other things going on. Hey, if you listen to my real podcast, the podcast I do, the PETA podcast, I talked to author Purva Joshipura about her book called Survival at Stake. Interesting book that talks about really how or why, ask why humans fail to embrace their animal sense, because they don't, our survival on this planet is at stake. So it's a very anti-speciesist movie, or excuse me, very anti-speciesist book that she's written, which is important because you need to know, what is this speciesism? The prejudice and discrimination against other species, this idea that humans are at the center of it all, or we're not. We're in this symbiotic relationship with all species. And when we forget that, it's not good for everyone. So anyway, poor Joshipura, my opening question to her was, you're the Senior Vice President of International Relations at PETA. When do you have time to write a book? And she tells me. Anyway, get it wherever you podcast, the PETA podcast. It's the PETA podcast with Emil Guillermo, which I'll have to start saying because there's another PETA podcast. There are other PETA podcasts, but this is the one with Emil Guillermo. And you can get that wherever you podcast. This is Emil Amok's Takeout, which there was a version that was available wherever you podcast, but this is only available on YouTube because I do it live and it's there, youtube.com/@EmilAmok1. Also on Facebook, fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media. Also on Twitter, @EmilAmok. That's where you get us. And like I said, we've been, I just haven't been feeling so great. So I've been taking it easy. And then I got excited again by the New Hampshire primary. And so So check it out. I'll do my column is on the ALDEF blog. AALDEF dot no ALDEF AALDEF.org/blog. And I know you'll read it and you'll think, oh, it's going to be a long election year. It is. It's going to be a long election. I don't think Nikki Haley's going to give up. I think she wants to make a point. I think she's holding out for the Nikki Haley meets Kamala Harris, mano a mano, knockdown, drag out, South Asian women duke it out for the White House. I think she's gunning for that. Anyway, what else is going on? Oh, I need to mention the fact that I do a show called Emil, Amok, Lost NPR Host, different iterations. I did Lost NPR Host found under St. Mark's in New York. I'm going to do a version of it with talks about my veganism or not talks, but with a special segment on my veganism and being a trans dad in Fresno. Going to Fresno, then doing it in New York again, and then doing it in Orlando at the big Orlando Fringe Festival, which is the big Fringe Festival in the United States. I think it's the biggest. It's fun. I love Orlando, and they nicely situated. And you're in Orlando, and if you don't want to go to Disney World, you come see Emil. Do Emil Amok, Lost NPR Host. Anyway, the dates for all that. I'm in Fresno, March 2nd, 3rd, and 7th. I'm in New York City, April 5th, April 8th, April 13th, April 19th, and April 21st. And the Orlando dates are in May. So, that's what you're doing with your time, Emil. Yeah. And I hope you catch it. Catch my show. Emil Amok, Lost NPR Host. It's Lost NPR Host, Vegan Tales and Trans Dad. Something like that. You'll like it. It's a lot of this, only, it's a show. All right, that's it for me today. If you've missed any or all of this, I truly regret it. No, you can go back, use your finger, go back to the start, listen to other things, or listen to the whole thing. We're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, live. Generally, if not, you got to go to get a repeat. But this is show 640, if you're counting. So thank you for being here. I know you have choices. Like me, I have, but I like to fly Alaska Airlines. I'm sorry. They asked me to pay a few extra dollars to get doors with bolts on them. So I did. I said, I got my door bolt card. I had to pay a little extra for that. Oh, you didn't pay for the door bolts. Well, you sit back here. Oh, but you did. Oh, well, you sit up here. I do a little meditation. It's helped. I found that to be helpful to deal with all these things. I mean, a lot of people want to watch Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, apparently, but I meditate. I meditate. A little loving kindness goes a long way. A little metta, M-E-T-T-A. A little quiet. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal